Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrain. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest.
Dave Brock, this is an absolute pleasure. Welcome to the show, my friend.
It's always such a pleasure to be invited. It's been a while, so I thought I had pissed you off in the last time we did it. I was so grateful to see the invitation in my inbox a few weeks ago. So I'll try and manage not to piss you off or piss your audience off today. I don't know whether I can do that, but
I think you could be pretty confident you're not going to piss me off. But hey, I'm not going to speak for everybody else out there. Actually, let's have some fun. Let's try and piss a few people off. Let's have some controversial takes and some good discussion. Deal?
Absolutely. Well, you know that's the way I always am anyway. So I'm real comfortable with that.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I've noticed. I've been following you on LinkedIn. The reason I reached out is I was following you. We've done this dance for a while. We follow each other on LinkedIn. We talk every now and often. But and there was a recent post that you made that it was like 50-50 in terms of, and I'm going to have to look up the post now, but 50-50 in terms of who was pissed at you and who was excited by your comments. Where I'm really wanting to go with you today, Dave, is your sweet spot is what the heck is going on in the world of sales and where should we be focusing? So I'm excited to learn a ton about that and just dive in and get your opinions. But first off, just do you mind giving the lay of the land in terms of what you're seeing out there right now with Salesforce sales people going to market?
Maybe we can carve them apart and look at it. Is one, I'm seeing a higher level of turbulence and uncertainty than I've ever seen before. And it's a whole bunch of things kind of converging in one space and at one time. And also we see things like a lot of the traditional like technology markets, the SaaS markets and those kinds of things. All of a sudden, we're starting to see their business models are collapsing. And this grow regardless of cost is starting to fall apart. You know, you see win rates plummeting, you see sales cycles tripling, quadrupling, you see average deal size, you see everything is going in the wrong direction. So, you know, there's a lot of the turbulence there where people are trying to regroup and say, where do we go? What do we do? How do we survive and how do we move? Then overlaid on top of that, we see the turbulence and disruption around AI. You know, what's AI mean? All SDR is going to be replaced by agents. And, you know, based on some of the SDR conversations I've had recently, it would be a blessing to have some of them replaced by agents. At least I could talk to somebody that's smart. And so you see that about how to incorporate AI into that. And then when you look at, I think, both a larger societal thing and then a lot of kind of the economic turmoil, the tariff turmoil in the last, month or so. Most of our clients tend to be very large multinational organizations. The issue of how do we deal with or what can we deal with has come up. So you see kind of everything converging. It's everything everywhere all at once. And so that's driven a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. So it's people trying to sort through that and saying, what can we control? What can we act on? What can we do? And what's outside of our control? And how do we maybe develop some contingency plans around that? So that's kind of one aspect that I'm seeing. And then I'm seeing this other thing. It was interesting. I just got off a long conversation with my good friend Brent Adamson, and we were talking about what are we seeing in the marketplace. And part of it is, and this sounds really crass, is I'm saying people who don't care at all levels is kind of, and we were talking about what that means is, we talked about it, is it work-life balance? And over the years we've seen, you kind of thumped your chest and were proud of, how many hours a week did you work? I worked 60 hours last week. Well, I worked 70 hours, and we kept trying to one up ourselves on number of hours a week we work. And it's gone to work-life balance and all that kind of thing. And we started saying, is it work-life balance? Is it people don't care? Is it they're getting their joy out of things outside of work? Society's changed and everything's changed, but I'm seeing a lot of people going through the motions. It doesn't mean they aren't trying hard, but they're just kind of going through the motions, and sometimes you don't see the spirit, the enthusiasm, the competitiveness. And again, I'm from a previous couple of generations. When I saw a brick wall, I was going to get to the other side of it, regardless of how I did it, whether I had to go right through it, over it, under it, around it. The fun and the challenge and the joy I got in the job was figuring out how to get to the other side. And I see so many people that say, whoops, we've hit a brick wall. We'll sit here for a while. And that mindset is foreign to me. And it may be I'm just out of date. But I'm seeing, as I talk to more and more people, I'm seeing more of them reflect similar kinds of ideas.
I'll agree with you. Again, I've noticed it in a long time. And I realized I recently had I had a conversation with, and I can't call it a conversation because it was just, there was an AI agent on the screen, and it was one of the AI agents that were meant to look and move like a person and that type of stuff. And I was having this conversation with it, and I realized that at any given point in time, I have a choice. If it says something that I don't like, or I don't want to hear, or that doesn't make me feel exactly right, I'm going to just turn it off. I have that choice. And I have that choice with a lot of things now in my life. And I don't like that choice, quite honestly, to a point where it's one of those things that it inhibits relationship and inhibits the ability to actually push through. And I go back to athletics. I loved athletics because it was one of those things that I had to hurt pretty bad. But when I hurt pretty bad, I came out the other side and I saw results of actually what got me through. And I knew if I took a day off or I quit, I wouldn't be as good or as, prepared as the next guy. And I'm seeing that like it was something that I just realized the other day. There are so many parts of my life that now, if it's not the 100% favorite thing, or it's not treating me like I can flip it off. And I'm watching. I gotta think that relates a little bit to what you were just talking about societally, with this idea of, well, if I can, because everything is easy. Like, we have been given so many things so easily, at least a generation, and from not having to stand up and change the channel on a television. Now that's where that's where I used to get it from my parents. Back in my day, we actually had to stand up and change the channel, or you had to walk to a telephone.
Yeah,
but so many things are just so easy.
Was getting up and walking over to change the channel.
Yeah, I exercised back in my day,
Now just say, Alexa, change it to whatever.
Yeah, it's wild. And so I don't know if that has something to do with it or not, but it's actually one of the reasons that I've really liked, that I like being in sales right now. Because I don't think we have the ability to do that. Like, I don't think, and if people do that, there will be winners and there are winners and losers, but I don't think we have that luxury of not caring, of not figuring the next thing out. I think if we fall back on our tendency these days to just change the channel or turn it off, or, swipe whichever way you want to swipe, to not deal with something, that's painful. It's painful, the results you start to see.
Yeah. And I think so I think as we start segmenting this and say, how do we really do something about this, is I was having an interesting conversation with somebody earlier today about what we see in business, all the stuff that I described earlier that I'm seeing with some of my clients and that I'm seeing in general. What we see in business is a microcosm of what we're seeing in society. And so it should be no surprise that some of this thing and maybe lack of caring or, just turmoil and confusion is we shouldn't be surprised about seeing this in business because we're seeing everybody facing it in society and all the uncertainty and all that we go through and all. But here's where I start saying is within business, we can change that. Within our business, we have the ability to change that. I can't change society. I can, make little dents every once in a while. That's the idealistic part of me, but I can't change society, but I can change business and the world we live in every day when we work. And some of that might leak out into how society works. But now my focus is how do I not use society as the excuse, but say, we have a business to run. We want to achieve things. We have a purpose. We have goals. How do we do that? And so here I think we go back to, fundamentally, and I'm pretty harsh on this. This is a leadership issue. It's a leadership issue around, are we creating meaning? Are we creating purpose? Are we creating value in our work? Are we creating places where people want to work, where they want to be engaged, where they feel that they're heard and want to contribute? And I think we've gotten a little bit away from that. And I think if why am I as a salesperson going to bust my ass if I have a manager that really doesn't, all they care about is, not enough meetings, even though you're exceeding quota, not enough leads, even though you're the top performer this quarter. They're just kind of managing mechanistically and they don't care and they don't talk. And you wouldn't believe the number of conversations, and you see it in your feeds too, is people put on PIPs that are high performers, but they aren't meeting a outreach goal or they aren't meeting some sort of goal and so on and so forth. And so it really becomes a leadership problem of what are we trying to achieve? How do we achieve this together? And how do we actively engage everybody in the organization to do this? And if I don't care as a leader, why should I expect my people to care?
Mm-hmm.
And you start seeing, here's how the dynamics of how this happens and how this gets worse. If you look at the data right now, data shows average tenure at all levels, whether it's individual contributors up to senior executives, 11 to 18 months. So I come into a job and I know I'm only going to be here around 11 to 18 months. I'm going to work on the things that are fixable and where I can have an impact in 11 to 18 months. What can I do in 11 to 18 months to have an impact on the organization and also to make me look good so that in my next 11 to 18 month gig, I can do that. We also have people coming with, I only have one playbook and I'll do that playbook and then go off to the next thing and the next thing. So we start looking at, are we solving while we're working real hard, are we solving the right problems? Are we really getting down to understanding what's happening? Are we creating meaning and value in our organizations? I look at this, I look at just the sheer economic cost of those turnover figures. And it's not in expenses paid in salaries and recruiting costs and all those things. It's lost opportunity. It's lost opportunity measured in the tens of billions of dollars. And as a manager, if you go into an organization and you see there's some changes and things we need to make, by the time that you identify those changes, and by the time you implement the change initiative and start seeing the results on a sustained period of time, most of those change initiatives take longer than 18 months, even in very small organizations. And again, so you go back to say, what problem can I solve and have an impact? in 18 months. Rather than 1,000 emails today, send out 10,000 emails today. And here's an AI tool that can do that. And all of a sudden, we've increased our outreach by 10 times. I put a star on my leaderboard and say, that's one thing I accomplished, even though I haven't changed the business at all.
I had a great conversation with, if you haven't met Tony Cross from Growth Matters, I highly recommend you guys will hit it off. I, I don't know if you've connected with him, but great guy. We talked and we were talking about foundations. He's like, as on the shifting world, right? And when things are shifting and shifting so quickly, so many just don't, they go into that 11 to 18 month rapid problem solving mode, or trying to just make a name for themselves or an image or create their brand in a company. And even especially at the leadership level, the foundational need to the way companies grow, and you and I both know this, is the foundational need to build leaders and servants that can outlast you and outlead you and outserve you. And while you in your role, while you go then can focus on the next thing. So many don't focus on that. They focus on, like you said, that plan for the next 11 to 18 months, or just trying to find their own footing in what's going so crazy. What foundationally, what companies have you seen, or have you seen companies out there that have done a really good job of just driving in that idea foundationally of, we are going to continue to build people that can read, react, change, and do so together? Is that even a concept that you see people leveraging in sales anymore?
It is a concept we see all the time, more rarely than it should be, but we see it all the time. And typically, if we look at whatever segment we're looking at, if we look at the consistent high performers, the people that aren't just a flash in the pan, they've done it this year or maybe 2 years in a row, but they've been consistent high performers for 5, 10 longer years, you can start seeing there's something different about them. These consistent high performers tend to be the leaders in their marketplace, regardless of the sector. And you start seeing what they're doing. And what they're doing is really based on basic business fundamentals, basic values, and so on and so forth. The conversations, most of our client base tends to be larger organizations who are the highest performers. They're in like the top 5 or so performers in their segment. And so these people are always, it's not that they're not doing anything wrong. They're doing more things right than everybody else, but they're trying to say, what's next? How do we change and how do we evolve? And they do that from a fundamentals basis. It's not, what's this, boy, gee, I found this new magic AI tool that I can use that can, pop things up and replace all my SDRs. Is, there's some more fundamental business principles and thinking and foundation to what they're trying to do. And they know that there aren't miracle cures. There aren't, fancy elixirs that I can go and buy, and all of a sudden I have the body of at least Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was younger. Well, maybe I'd accept the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger as he is right now, but there aren't these things, and they recognize that, and they recognize that it's hard work, it's thoughtful work. The most interesting thing is it's fun and challenging work.
Yeah.
That was, I mentioned Brent and I were talking just before we got on this. And what he and I were saying is the kinds of clients he's working with, the kinds of people I'm working with, an inherent trait in all of them, and that's part of our ICP definitions, is curiosity. They're looking for that challenge. They're not looking for the miracle cure, but they're just curious about saying, we've been a top performer for years. What's next? How do we seize more market share? How do we grow in ways that were unimaginable? Let's explore new ideas. and they try experiments. They get their teeth kicked in, they fix it, they go on and move forward. And again, characteristics of that have a big Australian client in professional services, one of the top performer in Australia, but one of the top performers in the world. One of the things that's interesting about them, when I first started talking to the CEO and CRO, I asked the question, what's average tenure in your organization? But they said among the managers, average tenure was somewhere around 15 years. And the CRO was apologetic. He said, Dave, our average tenure in our salespeople is really pretty bad. It's much lower than we would expect it. And he said, it's 7 years. And he said, and then he said, but the reason it's 7 years is we've been recruiting about 100 new salespeople every year as we're growing. And also it's all those new people that are bringing, it's not that they have a lot of attrition or turnover, it's that they're growing so fast and bringing in so many new people, it brings the average down.
Yeah.
And you look at that collective experience that they've built and that collective kind of capacity for learning and challenging everybody in the organization to do differently. And that's what makes them great. And so I think when we look at these organizations that are in these 11 to 18 month kind of spirals, it's hard to build that kind of culture. It's hard to build that mentality. It's hard to say, let's look at the tough problems and how we figure it out together and how we have joy and fun in doing this and how we create really good results. And again, the world's business problems can't be encapsulated in 11-month solutions.
I love this discussion. I really thank you for it. I love going deep on it. There's a combination of factors that I think, like business wise, when I look at something that I call it hack culture and swipe culture. And then the third thing I have is this thought of the VC culture. I'm not anti-VC. Actually, I think venture capital can be a very good thing. I am anti how I've seen many behave in terms of their expectations, but especially, and I put it all together in these ideas like the hack cultures. I could hack any problem instead of having to build a foundation to maybe needing to do a rip and replace and build from the studs, right? The idea of hacking any problem to quick results, having my elixir I can take and look like Arnold. And that combined with the swipe culture, right? Yes or no. I don't need to I can learn everything about you without ever having a relationship with you. That's a little bit of a dangerous thing, right? I don't think it's and so you become ultra tribal and ultra choosy instead of learning to deal with that. And then, so the way I've seen that deployed in a lot of these 11 to 18 month runs, right? And the excuses is, well, we have a problem. We need revenue now. We need people to perform right now and figure it out on the fly. And if they don't work, they don't work. We're just going to treat them like kick them out the door. Like I'm a CRO. I would generally get kicked out the door in 18 months. I mean, on average, that's the average tenure. I think it's gone down to 15 months now. So I really like where you're talking around the foundations and that curiosity and diving in. Like, how do the organizations, I know you work with the larger ones, but what recommendation would you give to, say the small to medium business that is looking to grow to weather the storm, especially in their sales culture? What are the things that you're seeing that could help them as they're weathering this storm? Are there any thoughts on that?
I mean, you said something really important here that I don't want to gloss over. There's certain kind of cultures, and let me say, and say some of the SaaS companies and so on, where we hack everything and we have to move so fast and we have to scale so much. That's not different in these large corporations. These large corporations are having challenges, and they say, we need to solve these problems today, and we need to produce results today, and we need to start looking at producing results tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and next year and 5 years from now. And so what they have is a more holistic view. And they're saying maybe the solution I have that solves today's problem may create a huge problem for me a year down the road, 5 years down the road, and so on. So now they have a different framework by which they're looking at this. They have the same urgency of driving revenue this week, this month, this quarter, this year. But they're doing that looking at things more holistically than all these other people that are coming in saying, I got to solve this week, this month, this quarter, this year's problem, and I'm not looking beyond that. So and one is, I think it's the experience base too of those people who are in those roles. So the large corporations and these other corporations are no different, but they're addressing the same problems, but they're addressing them in a different way, in a different context. So I don't buy the argument that some of these smaller companies have that say, well, we're different. I've sat in front of boards of directors of super large corporations in executive meetings, where, I mean, just relentless pressure for growth and scaling and all that is there. And, trying to scale a $20 billion company at 15% a year is
Big number.
a big thing to do versus scaling a $10 million at 50% or whatever it is. So I don't buy those excuses. I think they're excuses. Two is, I think there are limitations in our experience base. And here I feel really bad for a lot of the young managers that we see. Is over the last 10, they maybe have entered into a company as an SDR 10 years ago. And they've been very, very successful and grown, and they've justifiably grown into a CRO position. But they have no other experience. Their founders have no kind of deep business experience because they're new to the business too. So they don't have experience in some of these business fundamentals. When I joined business, there are a lot of people who've been in the business a lot longer than I did. And I came in and I'm cocky and said, you don't get it. I'm a young kid. I went and got my MBA. I know all this shit. Leave me alone. And, pretty soon I said, well, gee, they do know something. I can learn from it and I can adapt it to this new world and where we're going. So I had a conversation with somebody the other day. It's like when we were kids, is my dad was wrong in everything he advised me when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. When I started hitting my 30s, in my 40s, I discovered how right he was. And we're going through the same kind of thing here, but the problem is they don't have any experience base to fall back on. They have a single model with no depth and no history and to fall back on. So it's tough for them to do this. And also you say, well, then given that as a reality, how do I do this? You start looking outside. You can't keep looking at your competitors. You can't, and here I'll attack SaaS. You can't keep looking at SaaS companies. Why don't you look at say, there are other technology companies that have been around for a long time that have slightly different things. What can I look and learn from them and bring into SaaS? I think you and I may have talked about this in one of our previous sessions or something like that. A number of years ago, I'm sorry, I'm off on one.
That's good.
Page, but a number of years ago, we were doing an innovation project or actually two innovation projects. We were working with one of the largest semiconductor companies in the world on innovation. I had a side business that was in extreme sports. And that business, I met really cool people and got free motorcycles, free surfboards, all the coolest stuff in the world. But the business failed. I ended up selling it. But we were doing an innovation project for an extreme sports clothing manufacturer. And there were two different groups of people. And I said, let's smack them in a room together and see what we can learn from each other. And it was really interesting. We went into the boardroom of this semiconductor company, and it was long mahogany tables and this fancy stuff and all this all along one side. It was about 15, 20 years ago. whereas all these people in powder blue shirts and khakis. On the other side of the table were people in leathers, sleeves, full sleeves of tattoos, long hair. The visible piercings were in interesting places. And they were sitting at each, and they were looking at each other. Then they'd look at me, and you could see them saying, "WTF? What are we doing here with these people?"
Yeah.
I just kicked it off, and I started talking about innovation and what they did not. What are the things that you're looking at in innovation? Why is it important to you in the semiconductor and so on? What are some of the things you're trying? And then we did that with the Extreme Sports Company, and they started doing that, and they were coming from very, very different perspectives. And then all of a sudden, they started listening to each other, and what they said is, "I can learn something from you." They were sitting and looking at these weird people from the Extreme Sports Company, and the semiconductor people said, "Some of the things you're doing are really interesting. I can take them, not literally, but I can take those ideas and adapt and tweak them into my space." Likewise, the Extreme Sports, you guys in these powder blue shirts and in this semiconductor company, there's some interesting ideas that we can bring into our business. And see, I think one of the problems that we have in progress and creativity in growing our businesses is we have a too narrow aperture. You see it in your feeds and all that, is SaaS people talk to SaaS people and nothing exists out of SaaS. And, in fairness, professional services people talk to professional services people and nothing exists out of professional services. And if we want to learn and innovate, what we do is what I call artful plagiarism. Look a few steps away. Look at what those people are doing. Get ideas from that and bring them into your company and see how you can grow and innovate and do things differently. And also, I don't buy the argument that people haven't had the experience, because you can get the experience or surrogates for the experience by looking in different places. I've had another session we had a few years ago. I sit on the board of a hip hop company, which would have old white guy sitting on a board of a hip hop company is really kind of interesting. And there are some artists we were working with, some big name artists, that I said, "Would you mind sitting in a strategy session with a Fortune 100 company?" And we started talking about hip hop, the business, and improv in hip hop. And all of a sudden, these guys in this board of this Fortune 100 company started saying, "Well, you guys look weird, and we're not sure we like your music. There's some interesting ideas here." And so it is easier than we think. We just don't take advantage of it.
Well, I think, and going back to that foundational aspect of our focus and top performers and leadership and people that dive, though, one of the things I've seen about top performers in sales, I'm just going to take what you said back to kind of the sales realm, is they are not the ones that have the formula. They are the ones that have the formula that never changes. I mean, they are the ones that have the formula that can take in input from everywhere else. So they have a baseline they have a playbook, but they can listen and learn and continually challenge themselves to get better, to call audibles and read and react to the market, to call the audible.
They have the ability to figure things out.
Yeah.
And see, look at what we've done in so many of our jobs is we've pulled out that ability to figure things out and said, "Here's the playbook, here's a script, don't deviate from this." And you and I both know the top performers, they use the playbooks and they use the scripts as guidelines, but they wander around within those guidelines and figure out what works the most. It's like, if you look at F1 racing, each driver drives a different race, but they have to drive on the same course. And so that's, I think, a lot of what we've lost is we have so regimented, we've taken that curiosity, that creativity, that necessity to adapt and figure things out away from our salespeople and mandated them use these words. And oh, by the way, an AI tool will use these words consistently. So why don't I just use the AI tool rather than you?
Yeah. I was one of the people that really I bought into the SDR culture. That's where I started. And I still think SDRs like that, or let's not call it the SDR culture, but I'll say it the assembly line nature of sales, right? So in SaaS, and I started a company that's what we built, front end sales teams. And a lot of that was on SDR, and then we would go to full cycle, and then that type of stuff. And over the years, here's a story that may or may not sense, but it kind of shows some of my learning there. The very first engagement that I had on that, building an SDR team, I did a full, this binder was 145 pages if it was 3, right? On here's your scripts, here's what you're going to do, here's how you're going to log it in Salesforce, here's how we're going to talk, here's what you say, here's all of your objections. And then pretty quickly after a couple of years, those slimmed down a lot. Those binders slimmed way down. And I started really realizing that the reason that those were written was the learning. It wasn't the doing. It was so we had a foundational background that we could speak the same language, that we knew certain things, and I could ask questions and talk to my reps and they could, but there wasn't that was the benefit of it. The benefit of it wasn't so they would say the exact same words every single time. That actually would become a hindrance. So I started saying, you learn this. So the reason this is written is so you can forget it. So you can actually come. And then one last part on this, I had one guy went into a meeting and it was probably 5 years in this business. And I showed him one of these slimmed down things. It says, hey, we're going to create one of these over the first 3 to 6 months for the engagement. We're going to get started. We're going to have a playbook. We're going to be able to operate together, everybody on the same page. And he looks at that book and he tosses aside. He goes, whoever wrote that is a no-sell and MRFer. Like literally in a business meeting. He said, I'm like, and I have never seen one of my business partners, I've never seen him fire up quicker than that, because he was like, oh my gosh. But it just showed kind of the two different levels. Like we have there's that meeting of the minds that you have to be really good. You have to have a great foundation and common language that people can audible and call plays, and you trust them to do it. You can't have everything in a perfect binder that they're going to do every single thing every time. And you can't have them on this side thinking that everybody that ever looks at a handbook is a no-sell and MRFer, but I think there's companies that pull this off really well. I look at the IBM training program and all this, that pull it off really, really well. And it's how you scale that. And I have to think it's building leaders. It's building servants. It's building those people that, instead of necessarily telling them the right words, it's figure out how to use these words, or how to use this product, or how to use this to make an impact.
What?
Long story. Sorry.
No, but I think you covered such an important point here, and I don't want listeners to lose this point. It is, you get people to say two extremes of script this and follow it word for word, and the other people that say, this is crap, this is garbage, leave me alone, and I'll do my own thing. High performance is somewhere right in between there. And it's the playbook that you call audibles. It's the thing that says, here, let me have the guidelines that are based on best collective practices. And then let me call the audibles based on the situation. And I think so many people lose that they go to one extreme or the other that says, stick to the playbook, don't deviate. And they call it, what is it, the playbook MFers, whatever.
Yeah, that was a really interesting meeting.
Yeah,
Sitting at a board table.
You look at those extremes, and both of those are wrong.
Yeah. And Dave, we have gone all over the place, and I could talk to you probably for another 3 hours, but I don't think anybody would listen. Well, they might. Hey, can you tell people where to find you on LinkedIn and understand if they want to get a conversation with you at any point, tell them the best way to do that?
You see me on LinkedIn all the time. Just look for, I think it's Dave Brock or whatever, and we can post the
You're
link.
David Brock.
Okay, yeah, I don't even know what it is, but look at that. Go to my blog site, partnersinexcellenceblog.com, or just reach out. You can post my email in the show notes and all that, and just reach out through email for me and all that. Because I love these conversations. They're fun conversations, and I learn so much from them.
Well, that's why you're a consistent top performer, and one of the people I follow most on LinkedIn. And I try and read just about every word, and I really appreciate the time and the wisdom you. From the bottom of my heart, I really, really mean that. You are something special, Dave, and you sharing this. Please, everybody, reach out. That's an open offer that he's making. Make sure you do it. Take this man up on his wisdom. It's a special conversation. So,
well, thank you. I'm deeply appreciative of that and very flattered. Thank you.
Well, and with that, I will say, everybody, keep shining bright. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening, and we will sign off.